Nobody told the translation committee about the math, and the math didn't care.
That is going to need some unpacking.
The modern Bible translation industry, and I use that word deliberately, operates through committee consensus. A group of scholars votes on which words belong in the text, which manuscripts to follow, and which readings to accept. That is the process. It sounds reasonable. Committees of scholars making scholarly decisions about difficult textual questions. But here is what the committee never discussed. What happens to the numeric structure when a word is removed?
Because if the structure is real, if it is built into the original text, then removing words would break it.
Like removing bricks from an arch. The arch does not care why you remove the brick. It only knows the structural load is no longer distributed correctly. And that is exactly what happens. When Westcott and Hort produced the revised Greek text in 1881, the text that underlies the NIV, the ESV, the NASB, and most modern translations, they removed or altered thousands of words from the Textus Receptus, the Greek text that underlies the King James Bible. And in passage after passage where Panine had documented sevenfold numeric features in the Textus Receptus, those features collapse in the Westcott-Hort text. Not because Panine was wrong, because the bricks were moved.
And the committees making these decisions, did they know?
They did not. Ivan Panine wrote to the committee. In 1900, he sent a letter to the American Standard Bible Revision Committee, documenting his findings and asking them to account for the numeric structure before removing any more text. They did not respond to the mathematical argument. They proceeded with their revision. The math didn't change. The committee's conclusions changed, and the books they produced do not carry the same numeric architecture.
We have a caller today who served on a Bible translation committee. He is not angry. He is not bitter. He is honest. Dr. Wells, welcome to the Sealed Word.
Thank you, Marcus. I want to say first, the scholars on those committees are not villains. They are genuinely trying to do responsible textual work. But I think the honest admission is that the numeric dimension of the textual question was never seriously engaged. I served on a committee that made decisions about which Greek readings to follow in disputed passages. At no point in our discussions did anyone raise the question of what the mathematical features of the text required. It simply was not part of the framework we were working within.
If it had been, how do you think it would have changed the discussions?
That is the question I've been sitting with for several years, because once you understand that the text carries a mathematical signature, that the words are not arbitrary, that their values and their counts are part of a structured whole, you have to ask whether a committee has the authority to remove any word from that structure, regardless of manuscript evidence. If God built the architecture into the text, then the preservation of that architecture is part of preservation, and we were not discussing preservation in those terms at all.
And what do you tell people who say, surely the original language is what matters, not the English translation?
That is a fair point, except for one problem. The Westcott-Hort Greek text, the source text for modern translations, departs from the Textus Receptus in thousands of places. Those departures are in the Greek. The numeric features Panine documented are in the Greek. So when the source text is altered, the problem is not in the English translation. It is upstream. It is in the Greek that was chosen. And the King James translators chose the Textus Receptus, the received text, which is the text whose numeric architecture has been verified. That is not a coincidence I can explain away.
I want to make sure listeners understand what just happened. A man who served on a Bible translation committee just said, on this show, that the mathematical dimension of textual preservation was never part of the committee's framework, that they made decisions about which words to include without ever discussing what those decisions do to the numeric structure.
And he said it not with anger, but with honesty. That is the kind of testimony that carries weight, precisely because it is not evangelical. It is professional. It is a man in the field saying, here is what we did, here is what we did not consider, and here is why that matters.
For anyone listening who uses a modern translation, what does this mean practically?
It means your modern translation is a translation of a different Greek text, not a worse effort by the translators, not dishonest scholarship, a different source. And the source that carries the mathematical fingerprint, the Textus Receptus, is the source that King James translators used. This is not about reading level or contemporary language. This is about which Greek text you are reading in English. The KJV gives you the Textus Receptus in English. The modern translations give you Westcott-Hort in English. And only one of those Greek texts carries the mathematical architecture Ivan Panine spent 50 years documenting. SealedByTheKing.com. Brandon Peterson has a complete chapter on the textual question. PureBibleSearch.com. Run word counts in the KJV text. GraceNotesMinistries.com/KJV numerics, all the episodes. The architecture is in the text. The text is the King James Bible. And nobody on the translation committee voted on the math because the math was not taking votes.